Zeldin, Republican, House Foreign Affairs Committee. He'll be in the room for today's deposition. Sir, good morning to you. Have you attended all these interviews so far?
Yes, I have. I've actually been in the room more than Chairman Schiff has.
Wow. Give our viewers a characterization for how you believe this is going so far and where you believe it's headed.
There was absolutely no quid pro quo linking aid to Ukraine to an investigation into the Bidens. There has been so many allegations that have been launched towards the president that really has been obliterated by the testimony that's been given. I can only speak about the two transcribed interviews. I'm not allowed to speak about the depositions that have taken place, the substance of them, but I will tell you that there is nothing from anything that I've heard that you could possibly impeach the President of the United States for.
So what do they have, Congressman?
Well, they have creativity in developing a narrative, a story to try to connect all sorts of different dots that aren't actually connected. I see it with the way Chairman Schiff asks his questions inside these depositions. He will make multiple leaps and assumptions. He'll finish it with a simple question. If you give a simple answer, you might think you're answering the question, but you kind of bought into the premise of this question that has all these different assumptions. So it's very leading the way he asks his question. One example I can explain it is Michael McKinley, who's senior advisor to Mike Pompeo. Now, for one side note, the media reported that Michael McKinley resigned in protest. It's worth pointing out, and he testified that Michael McKinley was retiring anyway this quarter, 2019. But anyway, Adam Schiff asks a question where he's trying to get Michael McKinley to talk about how bad things are in the Mike Pompeo State Department. And then Michael McKinley takes exception with the question and said, quote, he had to recast the way the question was asked, and then he talked about how much better things have gotten in the State Department under Mike Pompeo. That type of questioning is something that we're seeing through every deposition and transcribed interview that's taking place, and it's disgusting.
But maybe I can ask the question a different way. Is there a singular fact that they have nailed down that they can present to the rest of the House and go forward with impeachment?
No, they really don't. They're going to be trying to claim that there was a quid pro quo. They might try to approach that argument from multiple angles. They might try to make a claim that the president's obstructing the process.
Well, you had Mick Mulvaney last week in the briefing room, which didn't appear on the outside to help matters. There are two interviews this week, just two. There's a suggestion the process is slowing down. Is it or not, sir?
No, I believe that there would have been more depositions this week. I hear because of Elijah Cummings, his funeral service on Thursday and Friday, some of the schedule has moved some of the people they want to bring in. And tied to that point I was making about obstruction, the president isn't saying that he's not going to cooperate. He's just like I believe that there should be a vote, a process, and that if there are rights, if the Democrats are providing Republicans and the president the same rights they would demand if the roles were reversed, then there would be more cooperation. You also brought up Mick Mulvaney's press conference last week. It's important to note that President Zelensky in Ukraine, they had no idea that there was a hold on aid. And then for several weeks, there's no mention whatsoever of a hold on aid or a quid pro quo. President Zelensky says he was not, his arm wasn't twisted, he wasn't pressured, there was no quid pro quo. There is so much evidence that so much of the media is ignoring that obliterates that charge. If Ukraine doesn't even know that there's a hold on aid, if they don't even know that there's a quid pro quo, and some here in the media are trying to just ignore all these different facts that we know and that we could talk about, because a lot of that came from Volker's transcript interview.
The way you're describing this, there's not going to be a vote. I mean, that's essentially what you're saying. You're saying today that Democrats don't have it. Is that right?
The Democrats don't have it, but that doesn't mean that's going to stop them from having a vote, because they have an enraged activist base that's demanding a vote. You have members of this chamber who have said impeach I'm not going to repeat it on air, since way before any of this fact pattern even started here with this particular case. They were lining up Pennsylvania Avenue with signs that said impeach him now while the president's hand was on the Bible. They don't care what the charges. They don't care what the facts are. They don't care what the evidence is. They just want to take down a sitting president. So from that standpoint, I think that there is going to be a vote, and I don't think that they really care much of whether or not their story completely lines up.
Let's see how that lines up in the end ultimately. Here's again the president saying that guys like you need to get tougher. Roll this.
I think the Republicans should get tougher. Look, I think that the Democrats are not good politicians. I think they have lousy policy. But you don't have the Mitt Romneys of the world. You don't have people that will go against the party. You have better, they stick together. I respect that. The other thing is they're vicious. They're much more vicious.
Perhaps not you, in the words of being tougher, but how do you respond to his characterization of the party?
Yeah, I mean, well, you have people like Mitt Romney, John Kasich. You see it on the Democratic side with Hillary Clinton, and now she's going after Tulsi Gabbard, calling her a Russian asset. You have these people who they've run for president, let's say, with those three examples. They lose, they're bitter, they're resentful. The president won this office that, for a long time they were looking in the mirror and they just were convinced that they were going to be a president of the United States one day. And instead of working with this president and advocating for passing USMCA or reducing prescription drug prices and so much more, instead there's that bitterness. So we're seeing that here in the Capitol, but you also have a whole lot of other Republicans who are fighting. One of the things that's important to note is a lot of people, they haven't been inside these depositions. They're not on the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Intel Committee, or Oversight and Government Reform Committee. So to go to the cameras, to be able to answer all of your questions, and to actually not know the answers of what's going on inside the depositions, that makes it a little bit harder to fight on some of the specific questions that are getting asked.
Republicans have argued selective leaking could influence public opinion, and let's see if that's the case ultimately. You mentioned Tulsi Gabbard. Here's the tweet from Bernie Sanders. She was a Sanders supporter in 2016, by the way. He says, Tulsi Gabbard put her life on the line to defend this country. People can disagree on issues, but it is outrageous for anyone to suggest that Tulsi is a foreign asset. Is Tulsi Gabbard a Russian agent, as was implied in that podcast on behalf of Hillary Clinton?
No, that's absolutely insane.
Why'd she say it?
Hillary Clinton seriously needs to see a psychiatrist. Like, she needs to talk through this with someone. She's not dealing with her loss well. She believes that, not just the reason why she lost, but also the legacy of why she lost is due to, in her mind, the Russians changing the outcome of our election. I think she's convinced herself of it. She has this bitterness towards Russia because of it, and she's gotten to the point where she also blames Tulsi Gabbard, who, by the way, it's important that we note the history of 2016. Tulsi Gabbard did support Bernie Sanders, and there's that resentment too. She's acting out, blaming anyone other than herself for that loss in 2016.
Okay, sir, listen, I've got to run, but thank you for your time. I hope you come back. You said a lot. Lee Zeldin, the Republican from New York. More soon. Thank you.